Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello and welcome to James Bond Radio. My name's Tom Sears, and I am joined, as per usual, by my good buddy from another Bondian mother, Mr. Chris Wright. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. So we've finished with the movie reviews.
Yeah.
And what have we got coming up for today and tomorrow as well, actually?
Well, this is the final week of the 30 Days of No Time to Die. Bit of false advertising, obviously, because it's like 20 episodes over the course of a month. So it's 30 days, but it's not 30 episodes, is it? So
but did we get away with it, Tom? That's what I want to know.
I think maybe we have, unless you want to crack out another 10 episodes by yourself.
Well, but, there may be a bonus episode or two, but we won't say when that's coming.
Yeah,
maybe.
Maybe if you're lucky. Yeah. But so this is the final week, and we thought what we'd do, this is because the first 3 weeks has been you and me just chin wagging constantly. And then we thought the last week, we always like to turn over our movie reviews to the JBR family, don't we, with the 90-second reviews with all our other Bond film reviews. So we thought the final week of the 30 days would be more what everybody else is saying rather than what we're saying. And we're also going to have a bit of a JBR, Team JBR round table as well with a few guests tacked on. And all that kind of stuff this week as well. So it's not just what you and me think this week, it's what everybody else is thinking as well. And then, of course, last episode will be the 90-second reviews. If you're unfamiliar with that concept, that's where everybody at home, all the listeners, the whole JBR family, come to jamesbondradio.com, they click the send voicemail button on the right-hand side, and they let us know their concise thoughts on No Time to Die in 90 seconds or less. So you can send that through your laptop or via your phone or wherever you want to do it. But and then we stitch them all together into one enormous episode, so we get a good snapshot of what the JBR family is thinking of the film. So I tell you what, I'm really, really looking forward to that, man, because it's going to be an interesting one, I think.
Totally, man, totally. We've had a couple of comments from people saying, what happens if it's 91 seconds? And I kind of had to say, well, it automatically cuts off at 90. Yeah. And then other people saying, can we not stretch it to 120 seconds or 3 minutes? But the trouble is, the more you build it up, the podcast is just going to be epically long.
That's it. So considering you and I have been talking about this for 3 weeks, if we gave you an unlimited amount of time, that podcast would go on for days at a time. So I think 90 seconds is good. The reason it is 90 seconds is purely because the software we use, that's what it gives you. But I also think it's a nice little byproduct because it makes you really focus your thoughts into a brief segment. And then, of course, when you stitch them all together, we're usually sitting there for a couple of hours listening to everybody's 90-second thoughts all stitched together. But man,
plus,
so that would be good.
Plus, it's also good fun to see how creative people can get within that space of time.
Absolutely, man.
Some people only need 4 seconds, man. That's all they need.
Absolutely. Yeah, big time. So if you haven't sent yours in yet, here is the call to action. Go to jamesbondradio.com and send us your 90-second review. Some people rehearse them and fit them in concisely so they get all their thoughts. Some people script them out. Some people just wing it, Mrs. Bell. So whatever appeals to you, get it done. Deadline is this Wednesday at 6 p.m. British time, so that's Wednesday morning for our American cousins and God knows when for our Australian cousins. Not that they've seen it yet, actually, so they don't have to worry about it. They can just enjoy the 90-second reviews afterwards. But maybe we need a supplementary Australian edition of the 90-second reviews for all of our brothers and sisters down in the down under is the word.
Down under. I think there's a few of them that would definitely be up for that. So that's something we can look into.
Righty-ho then. Go on, you were about to say something.
Yeah, well, just before we go into today's sort of main episode, there's a couple of things I wanted to mention. Firstly, I saw that you took Charlie, your little boy Charlie, to see his very first James Bond film. Now, was it a success? This was your third viewing of No Time to Die. Tell us what happened. What was it like?
Well, so here's the thing, right? So obviously, for anybody that doesn't know, baby is a baby. Charlie is a baby in arms. He's a newborn, right? He's like, how old is he now? 10 weeks old or something like that. And the worry was, I remember when I went to see the last Star Wars ending of the trilogy, when we went in there, somebody brought their baby in and they didn't, the baby started making a noise and they didn't take the baby out. And I'm down the front raging because it's like, you don't bring a fucking baby to the cinema, right? How dare you, And then, of course, now the shoe is on the other foot where I'm like, I need to take the missus to see Bond and we can't, at the age he is, he can't be away from her for very long. So, nearly 3 hour film, it can't be done. So we've got to take him. Now, some people were saying, do those baby screenings. They do morning screenings for mothers and stuff where the lights are up a bit and everybody's got a baby. I suggested that to the missus and she was like, yeah, but I don't want to sit there amongst a bunch of screaming babies. I want to see the film properly. So she was like, let's risk it and we'll go to a normal screening. We'll book one that's got few people in it and we'll hope for the best. So I was like, okay, what we'll do, I'll hold him. As soon as he makes a noise, I'll whip out and then you can just watch the end of the film. So that was our thing. He was absolutely fine until Em went, oh, for fuck's sake, right? When they stood on the Thames there, and then Charlie immediately went, wah! So I literally scrambled out of the back at the cinema, and he just didn't shut up. So I went and sat in the lobby, had a cup of tea, and let Mrs. watch the end of the film. So I've now watched it 2.5 times, right?
2.5.
But here's the question on the lips is, what did Mrs. Bond think, right?
Yes.
So I'm out there waiting, walking back and forth, drinking my tea, trying to keep him quiet. And then the clock strikes. I think she's going to be out any second now. Turn around and see her come out. She is in absolutely floods of tears.
Oh,
and
amazing.
She's like, I don't even know what to say. I can't process it. And we watched Spectre the night before just as a little refresh for her. And I just cannot process it. It's this, I just feel so sad. I'm absolutely gutted. But not in a bad way. She enjoyed the film. She loved it. But she was like, this is so intense. It's still to this day, she's like, I still can't process it. There's so much to think about. So it's, if anything, man, whether you like or you don't like the film or the ending, it's an impactful one for many, many people, isn't it?
Definitely.
So it's.
Is there going to be a second viewing then for Mrs.
Yeah,
Bond?
well, I'm going to. She said, because I had to bail, she said she'll take one for the team in return, and she'll sit with the baby at home, and I can scoot out and do a little solo viewing, do it solo style. So I'm gonna do that this week at some point, so I can get at least a fourth viewing in. I might pretend. I've got to go and do some work, and then just do a double viewing or something.
Maybe if you just get ready with the old hands to cover Charlie's ears. He's obviously not keen on the old curse words, so maybe that's what it was. That put him off, you see.
I was confused as to whether he just really didn't like them using Majesties in the way they did in the soundtrack in that particular scene. I think he might have been a bit outraged of like, why have they used it here? It makes no sense whatsoever. What's going on? I think that's probably what he was barking at. But,
although it was only half of a film, does that count as Charlie's first Bond film?
I guess it does. Or, yeah. Not that he was looking at the screen at all, but
no,
I can tell him in the future that was your first one.
Yeah, and you took me out of the screen, you little so and so.
No pocket money for you. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So there's one other thing I just want to mention before we crack on, which was I've been looking at a lot of the comments that people have left on the videos. Loads of really, really cool comments about, certain things that they've sort of realised or spotted in the films, which have been good. Obviously, it's come to our knowledge, and we expected this, that it is a hugely divisive film. We've got some people who love it, some people who absolutely despise it. Hopefully we're going to hear from everyone on the 90-second reviews. But one thing I have to say is, like, no matter your feeling, it doesn't mean that that's what the film is for everyone. So what I'm trying to get at is, I've seen people say this is absolute disaster of a film. It's ruined Bond. I'm never going to watch a Bond film ever again.
Yeah.
Barbara, Daniel had too much power. Barbara's at fault. Michael G's at fault. Fukunaga's at fault. It was the worst film ever. I absolutely hate it. And if anyone comes back saying, well, I kind of liked it, and then they have a go at that person saying, how can you like it? The script was weak. The direction is weak. So on and so on. It's like, that's not how it works. You can have your say, and you can say what your thoughts are. You can say how much you despise a film, but you can't tell other people how they should be thinking, because that's not how it works, man. It's everyone has their own opinion. And to everyone who sort of has a go at other people, but it could work the other way around. Like, there could be people that think it's brilliant, and then someone says, oh, I don't like it. And they're like, oh, how can you not like it? It's amazing. Although out of all the comments like that, it's generally the haters that are having a go at the people that like it, that I've seen. And it's like, it's fair enough if you don't like it. Like, obviously Dobson absolutely hates it, but we get on, we understand each other, we know why. But there's so many people out there who, if they like it, they're being vilified by other people that despise it. And that's not right, man. That's really not on. And if you're one of these people that hates the film and they're telling other people they're wrong for liking the film, then you're an utter fucking idiot. Okay, so just take your thoughts. You can say them, but don't try and push your thoughts onto other people, because that's not right.
Is this because I've been telling you you're an idiot for liking the No Time to Die ending all week, Chris? Is that what's inspired
Did I get my point across? I
Sorry,
wasn't sure.
no. I'll try and tone down my language in future. Sorry.
Okay.
You know what? On that note, actually,
Yeah.
I watched a documentary recently called The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
it's if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, because it will open your eyes to what social media does to our brains. And it basically, everybody is such binary thinkers these days, aren't they? It's either that or it's that. And it's like, if you like this, then you're a terrible human, or if you don't do this, you're a bad person, or whatever it is. And it just, like, the way social media works and the algorithms work, it is fucking mentally toxic, and it is designed to divide us in things like that and just cause arguments, and it goes way deeper than talking about Bond, like everything in terms of like political things and all the rest of it. Yeah. Really interesting documentary. And I think the more people who are aware of the sneakiness involved in what these platforms are doing to our brains these days, the better, because then we can at least be aware of it and stop this kind of shit from happening. But you're absolutely right, man. There's no telling somebody else how they should feel about something. That is what it all boils down to at the end of the day, man. Whether you can take the shittest film you've ever seen, right? But if you as the viewer, if it makes you feel a certain way, then that's all that matters. If it's like you could sit down, Chris, let's say you watch, I don't know, some terrible soap or something, or some crappy reality TV show, right? That for me is the lowest common denominator bollocks on the television. But for whatever reason, you get in from a long day's work, Chris, you put your feet up, and there's something about that show that just, you love it, right?
I like how you've made me the one that's really into it.
Yeah, man. But like, there's something about it you just love, right? Even though for me it's utter shit. And it's like, I cannot tell you that you're wrong for liking that, because it makes you feel a certain way. In the same way that No Time to Die, right? I totally understand it when people see Bond dying at the end and being like, fuck, Bond doesn't die. That's not what Bond is. This doesn't work to the rules of Bond, this film. I'm outraged. I hate it, right? Do you know what? You're not wrong, right? But equally, the person who at the end is like, wow, what an amazing ending that was. That was brilliant. They're also not fucking wrong. It's an opinion at the end of the day. Exactly. And this whole thing is fucking subjective. It's not like people will like to think in terms of it's a fact or it's not. And in some cases, things are facts and it's not. When it comes to an art form like this, everything is fucking subjective, right? Here's a perfect example, right? I think I'm going to go off topic a little bit here, and I apologize. We will get to the Bond stuff shortly, but just before the world started to end, right? My missus really likes Ian McKellen, right? So he did his like one man show thing in London. So I got tickets and said, let's go and see Sir Ian, and we went along. Sir Ian. Wizard. And man, it was brilliant, right? Sort of. So he comes out and he's talking about his life, blah blah blah, doing little snippets of scenes. So he comes out, he's got his fucking Gandalf hat on, he's got a copy of the Lord of the Rings in his hand, and he's like doing the "You shall not pass" scene, right? And I'm like, whoa, this is fucking cool, right? He talks a bit about X-Men and his life and all the rest of it. Brilliant. First half, great. Second half, however, right, we actually left early, right, because it was 100% Shakespeare, right? And he would come out, he opened this big trunk and he had all his Shakespeare books in there, and he's like, right, somebody call out a Shakespeare play, and somebody would go, oh, Macbeth, and he'd pick up Macbeth and he'd do a reading from Macbeth, right? Now, I have a suspicion, right, that Shakespeare is utter bollocks and nobody knows what's going on, right? Because I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is really boring now, right? Can you go back to the Gandalf stuff, please? And I'm looking around and there are people in the audience and they're looking at him with this like glazed expression on their face. Like the words coming out of his mouth are the height of beauty, right? And I'm sitting there going, I ain't got a fucking clue what's going on, right? So my suspicion is, right, one of two things, right? Yeah. Either I'm really stupid, right, which is fair enough, might be the reason, or everybody else in that theatre are pretending they know what's going on because it makes them feel clever, right?
Right.
I'll leave you at home to decide which one that is, right? All I know is my mate James has a saying that I think sums it up. He says, you could take the entire works of Shakespeare, right? The whole thing, start to finish, and it wouldn't be as entertaining as Terminator 2. And I'm like, that's exactly how I feel about it. I absolutely 100% sit down and watch Terminator 2 rather than listen to any Shakespeare. Now, that was a very long-winded way of saying, right, if you're a super Shakespeare fan, that's going to be right up your street and it's going to be brilliant, right? If you're like me, I'm like, and we both of us were like, let's just fuck off and leave because this is boring now. It's the opposite thing, right? And I'm not right or wrong. I'm both, right? I'm right for me, right? And the dude over there with the glazy expression on his face, he's also right because he loves it, right? It's not for me. I'm going to take myself off and do something else.
You basically wanted Sir Ian to come back on in a Terminator outfit and start shooting people. Is that
exactly
what you
that?
wanted?
That would have been better in my book, right? But also realise the stupidity of me saying Shakespeare is bollocks. I think it is, right? I genuinely think it is bollocks. But I also, you have to understand that maybe I'm just an idiot. So if you're somebody on social media shouting at somebody else for liking,
opinions.
There it is, right? Yeah, that's it. So there we go. Long-winded way. Anyway, should we talk about some Bond?
Yeah, let's get some Bond on. Do you want a bit of theme tune?
We haven't been doing a theme tune at all because there's so many episodes. It just makes editing easier.
That's right.
So
let's just crack on then. So what are we doing? We're doing MI6 Mailbag episode. So this,
yes, we are.
Yeah, sorry for that little brief start.
It's half of today's episode just ranting. Yeah,
that's it, just ranting. So MI6 Mailbag, you've been brilliant. Everyone listening that's submitted, we basically put a little post. Ask us any questions you want about the film, and we've had a load of people come in. So thank you to everyone who sent in a question. We're going to try and get through as many as we can, both today and tomorrow. Yeah. Tom, do you want to fire away with the first question?
Let's do it then. Opening up the sack. Okay, so question number 1 is from, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Henry Howran. And he says, going forward to the next film, what would you hope that they will not do for Bond 26? So, Chris, over to you, mate.
Okay, I hope it's not a rogue mission.
That's a good shout, actually, isn't it? Yeah.
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 Like,
he's done too much
Bond
of that,
going rogue. I want him being on a mission or given a mission, and that's the film, is him doing that mission and completing that mission. I don't want him saying, "Oh, piss off, Em, I'm going to do my own thing." I just want him to do, just his own sort of MI6 mission. That's what I want.
Like in the old days. What do you know about Francisco Scaramanga, Mr. James 007? That's
imagine if we get that type of M scene where whoever's playing Bond is asked, okay, so what do you know about this person or this thing? Yeah. I mean, that would be pretty sweet, wouldn't it?
I feel like we have to have that next time because you have to re-establish the new dude. I feel like you can't go too different. You've got to go different, but also within the boundaries of it being familiar, don't you? Like I always say, The Living Daylights, I think, is a great example of awesome. Doing that. You know what I mean? It's obviously a different vibe, but at the same time, those things that keep it familiar to Bond are there. So yeah, for me, what do I not want? I don't want more of the same. That's what I don't want. I don't want them to cook up somebody else comes along and just does the same sort of job that Daniel did. I want to return to the original style of Bond. I want him to walk into that M's office. What do you know about, I don't know, some millionaire, billionaire philanthropist who's actually evil? Bond reels it all off and sends him on a mission. There it is. And, does the whole thing. I want a classic vibe Bond film with all those key little things in. Let me ask you this, right? On that note, how do you think they play the supporting MI6 crew? Do you think we have to, because Daniel exists in his own universe, doesn't he? It's an alternate universe Bond. He's not the same dude that Connery, Roger, and the rest of the boys were. So do we? Obviously, there was the blip keeping Judy from Pierce to Daniel to keep it familiar. Do we keep the core MI6 crew and just have a new dude walk in and everybody pretends like it's normal? Do we do a complete recast? Do we keep a couple of them? Chris Wright, what do you think?
Right. Well, firstly, the one thing I definitely don't want to happen is to Bond be at MI6, but we don't have a Q and Moneypenny, and they get reintroduced again. I want them to be already there. So
fully formed.
I definitely, exactly, fully formed. The character is already there. It's a tough one because I think Rafe is brilliant as an M, and Ben Whishaw, I just think he's outstanding as Q, and Naomi Harris as Moneypenny is really good as well. But because it is that, but then that timeline, like you said, of Judi Dench to Pierce, which a lot of people are saying Pierce is part of the other Bond's timeline, whereas Daniel's his own. But yeah, obviously she crosses over. It is strange, isn't it? If the main MI6 crew stayed on, I think it would be a bit strange, but they are so good. Now, I think. Let
me ask you this, right? Because always the MI6 crew stayed on, whether it was Sean, whether it was George, whether it was Roger, sort of for Timothy, sort of for Pierce. Those familiar faces were all there, all completely different Bonds. Imagine this, right? You go and watch You Only Live Twice, you got one Bond. You go and watch Majesties, you've got another Bond. You go and watch Diamonds Are Forever, you got the old Bond again. You go and watch Live and Let Die, you got a brand new Bond, right? 4 consecutive Bond films, each with different Bonds in. How weird would that be? But then, of course, you've got the same core team behind each of those actors, right? You know, you do You Only Live Twice, you do Majesties where Blowfield and Bond don't recognise each other all of a sudden. Then you've got a different Blowfield and Bond in the next film, completely ignoring what happened in the last 2. And then all of a sudden you've got Roger coming along and it's completely unrelated to anything. So those were the anchor people, weren't they, between each one. So it has been done before. It's not like it. What in your book, why would that be weird? Is it purely because Daniel was alternate universe Bond?
For me, I think so. Because would you take on the character any of the so say we get a new Bond, but we keep the same actors, the same cast for the MI6 crew.
Yeah.
Are these characters have the backstory of the Daniel Craig Bonds, or do they have nothing to do with them? Because, like, is it Eve Moneypenny? Is it Gareth Mallory? And if so, is anything referred to the Daniels, or is because if it wasn't, which I think would be incredibly difficult if they were to do that, because obviously Bond died. It would just be strict. The only reason I think I'd like to see them is because they're brilliant, but ultimately I think it would be more effective and better suited if it was a complete clean slate and they recast.
Is that weird though? If all of a sudden you've got a completely new set, because the reason they kept Judy, A, she's brilliant, but B, it's because I remember them saying it would have been a bit weird to have a completely new recast everybody for Casino. But this is such a different beast, isn't it? Because we've never had continuity in Bond before in any major way. You know, a little bit from Dr. Nota from Russia, but not like this at all.
No. I think if it had been a different situation and Daniels wasn't its own sort of story arc, or at least in my mind it is, I think it'd be a lot easier to say, keep them on for the next one. But what do you think then? How are you feeling about that, MI6?
It's tricky because I really do love this MI6 crew.
Yeah.
I think though the difference is a different world these days, right? In the sense that the actors who played the MI6 crew weren't big names, were they? They weren't starring in their own films. They were supporting actors, right? Whereas Ben Whishaw is off doing Paddington and various other things. He's a big name. Ralph Fiennes obviously is a big name. So is Naomi Harris.
Huge name.
So it's like they're a different type of actor they're using these days. So personally, I feel like they're all done with it. I feel like they would be like, if Daniel goes, so do I. I don't think they're going to want to stay on board. Maybe there's a case for saying Rafe should stay and just act like nothing happened.
If there was only one, it would be him.
Yeah,
definitely.
But I think it has to be clean slate. Well, at least that's what I expect it to be. I expect it to be clean. Let's say Bond 26 starts, in walks Henry Cavill. I feel like it's got to be
I think it needs a new clean streak. So something we mentioned in a previous episode about potentially we've heard from a few different sources, whether right or wrongly, that the next Bond might be period set. Is that something? Obviously, the question originally is, what do we not want? Do you not want a 60 set period Bond? Would you prefer it to be contemporary?
Here's the thing, right? Cubby had a rule. Bond always looks forward, moves forward. He never looks back, right? And I think there's a part of me that's massively curious about that, right? Because if you said to me, choose the decade that is the best decade there ever was, it would definitely be the 60s. All the things I love the most were in the 60s. So there's a part of me that's like, man, I would love to see that again, right? That would be so cool. And especially, you could do away with earpiece Bond, and he's not going to be earpiecing it. And it would be, it's like I often say, man, I've said this several times before, but when I went to the Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. a few years back, it takes you through the whole history of spying, right back like 1,000 years ago to ninjas in Japan, and it walks you through to the modern day. And the worst, most boring part was the modern day, because ninjas are cool, always. When you get to like the Cold War, World War II, and it's like secret transmitters in, shoe heels, and you see the nucleus of what Bond is, right, in that stuff, and that's always cool. Hollowed out books, attaché cases, brilliant. Game on, I'll have those all day long. And then you get to the modern day, and it's hacking, and it's like hacking and satellites, and it's like, oh, this is a bit boring, you know what I mean? And that really was the weakest part. So there's a part like that time period, going back to the Cold War, the 60s. There is pre-internet. There is so much fun to be had with that time period. It's a much more romantic time period than we're currently in. With that said, my worry would be that it would be a bit pastiche-y. It would be the wrong move in terms of the value of what Bond is. It might be a bit like, for want of a better term, Austin Powersy. Do you know what I mean? Going back to those days where everybody's got the bouffant hair and that look. It's like that. As much as I'm like, part of me would love to see that. The other part of me is like, for Bond to stay what he's always been, I feel like he should be a reflection of the times we're currently in.
Totally. And I agree with you. I think the only way that I'd like to see it done is, it's been said a lot of times before, but actually 50 set adaptation of the books, TV series, loads of money, amazing cast, do it that way. A proper adaptation to it.
So,
I mean, it would never happen.
What if it was a TV? Wasn't a TV series, and they were like, next Bond, we're going back to Fleming, but properly this time, and we're doing it exactly as it was written.
So 50 set,
or as close to
exactly from the books, or close to be, and so we'd be using the same. Yeah, I don't know, because I still want to see Bond in today's world, because you mentioned all the technology, but you can have. Is there a way that they can just you could still have things like the attaché case and stuff like that without trying to focus too much on the techno heavy side of things? Maybe
you could just ignore it. Like, so I remember reading recently that Vladimir Putin doesn't use a computer. He literally has a typewriter at his desk. Whether it's true or not, who knows? But like, he's so paranoid about being hacked and bugged and all the rest of it that he goes super old school. And I feel like there's an argument to be had for Bond there, like a modern day Bond who's, we're all being listened to on our phone every 5 minutes, being like, oh, I fancy a new pair of shoes when you're at home chatting, and all of a sudden you're getting ads for new pairs of shoes on Facebook or whatever. It's like, if you were a super spy, you would be aware of that sort of shit, wouldn't you? And maybe you don't use those technologies for a reason. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Go back to Brosnan days. Having a phone in your pocket that could do all the things our iPhones could do was the coolest thing in the world. But now we've all got it. Everybody's got it, so it's not special anymore.
So I think ultimately, going forward, I think for me, I'd prefer it to be contemporary, less of the techno stuff, but can still have gadgets, but just concentrate less on the hacking techno computer side of things. But if they ever did decide to do the adaptation or a 50 set, that would be cool as well. But so I think that's ultimately what I'd prefer. But that's question one. God, this is going to be a good episode.
Goodness me. All right, then question number 2 is from Dave Humphrey. He says, I think that No Time to Die is a modern, inverted remake of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Instead of a farm animal-based virus with modern technology, it's nanobots. Bond falls in love, but there are role reversals towards the end. Instead of Blowfield making the virus, he steals it. Then there are all of the On Her Majesty's callbacks.
I think that's fair enough. Yeah,
that is what's funny about this is absolutely. I mean, there it is in the beginning. They're burning along. We have all the time in the world. You get that little tremor in the score to let you know something's happening. Because, of course, rewind a little while, and you and I would have been saying, there's no way Madeline is going to survive the pre-title sequence. You know, are they doing that Majesty's thing that they were planning on, that they toyed with doing, where the opening shot of Diamonds Are Forever was going to be the death of Tracy, and they went off into the sunset at the end of Majesty's, you know? Maybe they're recycling that idea, and that's it. We never for a moment dreamed at that time that it was going to be the Majesty's ending, but it was Bond instead, you know? So yeah, the funny thing is there's parallels with Majesty's, You Only Live Twice, the book, and Dr. No as well, in terms of the vibe and look of things, not so much the story, but so yeah, I almost think it's almost like the other side of the Majesty's coin, isn't it? It's almost like if Majesty's is the call, No Time to Die is the answer, or something like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Different sides of the same coin, or something.
Definitely, yeah, I'd agree with that. I think obviously the Heracles is pretty much the Omega virus, but just updated, I suppose. You've got the vials and stuff like that. So yeah, no, good shout.
All right, very nice. Next question is from Mr. Rory Cooper, Quizmaster General. He says, gents, what are the pros and cons of the portrayal of Spectre as an organisation in Craig's last two films when compared to the 60s equivalent? I won't post my 10,000-word essay on it. Let me say that again. What are the pros and cons of the portrayal of Spectre as an organisation in Craig's last two films when compared to the 60s equivalent? Okay, do you want to lead the way on that?
I think straight up with the con is that they didn't have time to plan it out properly. And we've said this a lot, and I think everyone must feel the same in terms of if they'd had the time to plan Spectre out over 4 or 5 films, you could have really nailed home this whole massive global organisation, the power it has, the power of Blowfield and everything like this, and weave it effortlessly into the storyline. Obviously, we didn't get that. So I think the cons were the fact that it's only in 2 films, and really it would have been so much better if we had it in at least 4 or 5 or in all of them, you know. I know they retconned it a bit, but it didn't quite work, I don't think. So obviously the pros are that we got to see it again. We heard, you know, just seeing that Spectre thing, that title reveal, and obviously getting Blowfield back, I think is brilliant. It's just a shame that we only had it for 2 films, and I think it's, for me, a bit of a wasted opportunity. Obviously, the trouble is they haven't had access to the use of the character and everything since sort of Thunderball days. And then, well, because of Thunderball anyway. And then suddenly they've whatever it was, the legal rights, or paid it off or whatever, and they've suddenly got legalized access to Blowfield and everything around Spectre. So straight away, I mean, prior to that, they probably had something completely different planned. Suddenly, okay, it's now available, we have to use it. But Daniel's into his 4th film. Now we know he only had 1 more after that. And looking back, it's a shame that maybe they didn't keep that for the next Bond. I know it's a bit weird because obviously the last 2 are what Spectre, you know, heavily involved Spectre. But imagine if it was just Safin in No Time to Die and nothing related to Spectre, and in Spectre obviously wouldn't be called that, but in Bond 24, if it had a different villain, and then in the new Bond from 26 onwards, suddenly we have this whole fleshed out Spectre story in the background going on. What would you think to that?
You're absolutely right, and of course it would have been better if it would have been planned out from day one. 5-film arc, all planned out in advance. Brilliant, game on. The tricky part is of saving it for the next one is they were obviously setting up that idea with Daniel, because end of Casino, in comes Mr. White, boom, you know, money's not as important to our organisation as knowing who to trust. And you're like, oh, what's this organisation? And of course you have Quantum of Solace, you have the Quantum Group, and that was a Spectre meeting, wasn't it? At the opera, and what a brilliant scene that was. And there was the build up, there was the thread, and of course if they hadn't got the right Spectre Blowfield, I'm sure the Quantum, we would have had what we got, but it would have been the Quantum Group all the way through, you know. I would. And with
that, would you have preferred that if it had been Quantum and we'd save Spectre for the next one?
No, I wanted Spectre. I wanted Spectre hard and deep, and for me, I wanted it, right, and I've said it many times, but like that, the one of the jarring things for me about Skyfall was like okay, we've had this build up. You have the little tag at the end of Casino with Mr. White. You have the whole film of Quantum building up to this thing, and then Skyfall, it's completely ignored.
Yeah.
And it was like, I so wanted that story, man. The shadowy organization, where, you know, they have Guy Haynes, the assistant to the Prime Minister, I think he was
so
meant to be, or
strange
something.
how it just suddenly,
yeah, and it's like,
just left behind almost.
Yeah, exactly. And you have all these threads of like, whoa, they have people. That scene with Mr. White is like, you don't even know anything about it. So we've got people everywhere. It's like, holy shit, there are people that high involved in this thing. This is big news, right? Skyfall comes along. Doesn't matter anymore. It's just not even a thing. So that's one of the reasons. It's like, oh fuck, I so wanted them to carry that on. And then obviously when Spectre comes along, it ties it all together. So for me, really, the fly in the ointment is actually Skyfall. It's not the retconning thing, because if you take Skyfall out of the thing, right? Let's just take that out and put it over here for a minute, and you go Casino, Quantum, Spectre. That runs perfectly, because Quantum could quite easily be a subset of Spectre. It could quite easily be a subsection. One of the letters, you know, Special Executive for Counterintelligence, Terrorism, Prevention, Extortion, could have been what, you know, the counterintelligence one could have been called the Quantum Group or something within Spectre. So that's not a difficult retcon for me. That's a piece of piss. Skyfall is that fly in the ointment for me there. So yeah, of course it would have been better. Revisiting it last week when we watched Spectre one night and then we went to see No Time to Die the following night.
What was that like?
It was interesting, right? You know me, I fucking love Spectre. I adore that film. I think the things that people don't like about it aren't anywhere near as bad as people seem to think it is. Like, yeah, the endings, you know, could have been better, but it's like, for me, that nowhere near spoils the whole fucking film. And yeah, so I fucking love it, right? It's for me, actually, out of all of Daniel's at the present moment, that has the most replay value for me. If I'm going to stick a Daniel on it, it's going to be Spectre right at the moment. I even said to Catherine, I was like, after we watched it the next day, I was like, you know what? I could sit down and watch Spectre again all the way through right now, today, the day after. And it's just, I don't know. It does it for me, that one, man. And I love it, right? And for anyone listening at home, listen to what Chris was saying at the beginning, all right? I'm not wrong. I'm allowed to like it, okay? Anyway. So, yeah, what were we talking about? I've gone off track now.
It was the pros and cons of
Pros
Spectre.
and cons, yeah. Sorry, Rory. I'm back. Here's where I think that obviously the Bond and Blowfield knowing each other as kids, contrived idea, right? Let me ask you a quick side question before I get sidetracked again.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a bad idea in general? If it hadn't have been Blowfield, but another villain that Bond knew as a child, do you think that would also be terrible? Or do you think there's meat to be mined there? I
think the idea itself isn't a great idea. I think the fact it was Blowfield, it's magnified even more so.
So if he had have been Franz Oberhauser, and that was what he stayed, and he was the villain in a Bond film was Franz Oberhauser, and they'd known each other as kids, is that still shit?
Maybe it wouldn't have had as big a...
Definitely amplified because it's Ernst, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
I suppose the tricky thing is as well, isn't it? Because us as super geeks, we have the Fleming texts in mind. Well, this is what Fleming said, so that's the real one, right? And if you do anything that's not that, then it's like, well, hold on, that's not right. That's not what Blowfield does, you know? So there is also that. So definitely magnified. But again, it is a bit, I don't even really like, aside from the young Bond books, which are a different sort of universe in my mind, I don't like thinking of the film Bond as a child very much. It's just like I don't know if that sits well with me. Anyway, I digress, right? Here's what I think is the later Blowfield Spectre, 60s Blowfield Spectre. I think we never got the introduction to Blowfield at the Spectre meeting, which I think was a masterstroke. I loved that Spectre meeting scene. Brilliant. So excited about that. Everything else, it's all right, you know. I think he needed to have that like Hans Lander moment where he freaked out and he became terrifying. He's too jolly. He's too like, we saw a man be removed of his eyes and he was there for a moment and then he was gone. Weird. And he's too jolly, right? Which in some cases could be a bit could be unsettling because he's talking about something really dark, but I don't think it comes across that. Walking through the creator base, he's like, so James, why did you come? And it's all like, oh, hello, welcome. I don't think that's what Blowfield should be. I think a modern Blowfield should be an absolute raving psycho. That's why I think General Orlov, Stephen Burkhoff, maybe he's too old for now, but maybe he's not. I don't know. I think Orlov was a nut job, wasn't he? And that's the sort of thing I want to see from a Blowfield is one who will freak the fuck out, because he commands that room in the Spectre meeting, doesn't he? Like, just twists his head completely. And they bring the microphone forward. Everybody's terrified of him. They really, like, in that one scene, everyone's terrified of Blowfield, and it works. Every other scene, why would you be scared of that Blowfield? He's too jolly, he's too friendly, even though he is obviously a nutter. I don't think we ever saw any payoff of why we should be scared of Blowfield post that meeting scene. The meeting scene built it up massively. Game on, brilliant, this is great. Exactly what I want from it. We never saw why everybody's scared of him, really. And
do you think we get that from previous incarnations of Blowfield?
No, I don't think we've ever seen a really solid Blowfield, to be honest. I mean, for me, I always said that Donald was the best, but for me, he's the iconic visually one, but he's cool. I think maybe Telly is perhaps the best Blowfield we've had, certainly closest to the Fleming books anyway. But I don't know whether we've really had, because essentially Blowfield is supposed to be like the Joker to Bond's Batman, isn't he? The arch nemesis, the Lex Luthor to his Superman. And again, you go back to Connery, we had all that build up. You have the end of Majesties, which we should have had some monster showdown after that. All of the 60s build up to that moment, but obviously we never did for obvious reasons. And so it's a weird one, isn't it? I don't think it's ever been done properly. Now, go on.
No, okay. Quick question, slightly. Well, it's along the same lines. If you were in control of the next Bond and the next, say the next Bond does 5 films as well.
Yeah.
Would you bring Spectre back?
No.
During that arc? Would you leave it until the one after? Do you want to see it again in the future?
I do want to see it again in the future. I want it done really properly next time. But I think it's too soon to because if you're going to do Blowfield properly, you need that long build up, man. You need the dude behind the screen stroking his pussycat. We need at least 2 or 3 films of that before we have any kind of showdown. That's the Blowfield rules in my book. And if we start that again in the next film, it's going to feel too much of the same. So I feel like give it a rest for the next Bond, do something completely different. Bond number 8, then maybe explore that again. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think it would just seem too weird if we've just seen a Blowfield and then suddenly we've got a different one. Although they did that back in the day, I think now give it a bit of breathing space, and at least they know that they can go back to it in the future, as and when. But I think just come up with an original story, standalone mission, original villain, play down the hacking computer side of things, still keep it sort of. You can still use gadgets that aren't high tech, sort of thing, and just play it like that. MI6 Crew already set in their place. No introducing. There they are. Let's go. Start with Bond, deep into a mission, like proper. We want a bit of sneaky in the pre-titles. We want to not see his face for a bit until something happens, and then there he is. And you want some kick-ass stunt that bowls everyone over, and you want some deadly action, and then like a hot lady at the end just to finish it off before the title scene. I mean, that would be
that's what I would like. Do you know what I think? Maybe doing Colonel Sun or an approximation of it would be a good.
There's a lot of good stuff in there.
There's a lot of good stuff in Colonel Sun. I'm very excited about that. Again, just to circle back to the previous question, I don't want to see another Becoming Bond story. I don't want to see him being back to being a rookie agent again. No. I want fully formed, prime of his life Bond. Forge ahead.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Good question, Rory.
Right.
What
Do you
about
know
the next
what?
one?
We're already 45 minutes in, so I think that's a good place to stop, and then we can jump in tomorrow and do some more questions. Go on.
One more? Let's go one more, just because we gave him 20 minutes of spiel at the start.
Right,
so
yeah.
I think we deserve to give him one more.
My Shakespeare rant. Okay. Okay, next up is then from Mike Hinrichs. He said, how much cooler would the ending have been if when Bond got up on the roof of the building at the end, he pulled out Felix's cigar and smoked it while the missiles came in?
Ooh. What do you think to that?
Now, on the surface, I like that, right? But the Bond I know, that's the way he'd go out, right? That's how Roger's Bond would probably go in that situation. He'd bring out the cigar and smoke it and away you go. But I think it would, with this tone and style of No Time to Die, I think it would cheapen the emotional impact and make him less, he'd be like, as he was, he's broken, he's gutted. It's a very sad moment. And if at that time he was like, let's bring out the ciggy and have a go, I think that would take away from the emotional impact. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if the story ended up with Bond in the same situation in terms of who's going to die and the missiles are coming, but it didn't have the love story with Madeleine and Mathilde, then you could potentially have him look at the cigar tube or something if you wanted to, as a throwback to Felix. Yeah. But the fact you've got everything else going on, as you know, obviously they work together, they're friends, as close as they may have been, it's nothing compared to Madeleine and Mathilde, and and so Felix just wouldn't be on his mind at that point in time. So I just don't think it would have worked at all. Good idea, and I could see that in a different scenario, a different situation working, but just not with a film and the sort of scene that we had at the end.
Very emotional, isn't it? Very emotional
indeed. I tell you what, I must say, just the other day I watched the Being James Bond documentary, which have you seen that yet?
I watched it as well.
And I haven't seen it because obviously I was staying dark and everything, so I hadn't seen it for when a lot of other people had seen it. But man, that got me. That really got me. I was in tears at the end, and Daniel comes. I love Daniel. I think he's brilliant, and it really got me. And I thought it was a fantastic documentary.
I tell you what, man. What I think we all need to think about and remember is that we are so at the end of an era right now. When you think of when I was growing up and Pierce was the man, you know, he was the next Bond film's coming out, Pierce is in it, you know, and then that comes to a screeching halt, big old gap. Then we've got Casino, and we're into a whole new time of life, and we're at that time now where that's coming to a screeching halt. There's Daniel Craig isn't going to be Bond anymore. He's the guy that used to be Bond, and then there's going to be soon enough this new dude who is Bond now, and it's like what a interesting time it is between each Bond, you know what I mean? Because this new dude is, whoever he is an untested entity, you know, and it's like they talk about him becoming Bond, don't they, or being Bond, whatever it's called, being James Bond. That's it. He talks about how everybody were coming to see Casino Royale because they expected it to be a train wreck, didn't they? And that was the thing. And then obviously it was a great film, so it all turned around from that point. The new dude has to prove himself, and it's going to be a whole different flavor. It's going to be a whole different world, man. And it's like you can almost think about where you were in life when a certain Bond film came out or a certain actor was playing Bond. You know what I mean? It's like when the next dude comes along and he's probably fucking 5 to 10 years younger than you and I, Chris. And it's going to be like, oh, Jesus Christ, we're getting old. And we'll think about the good old days when Daniel was Bond, or the good old days when Pierce was Bond, or Timothy even, you know? Yeah. It's a weird thing, isn't it, to think of where we are right now. It's a very interesting time for sure. Well,
whoever it ends up being, A, hopefully they're amazing, and I'm sure they will be, but B, let's hope they don't get the hate that Daniel got from the media and everyone, the backlash, even before anyone had seen Casino, which was pretty horrid when you look back. But then, you know, that might have spurred him on to make it even better. So either which way, is it, like you said, interesting time. I guess in the coming months, years, we'll find out who it is.
All right, then. That about wraps up today. We will be back tomorrow morning with more listener thoughts, ponderings, questions, and talking points. Until then, James Bond Radio will return. My name's been Tom Sears.
My name is Chris Wright.
And we'll be back in the morning, everybody. See you
then. Bye.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Good night.